The latest Newspoll figures have been released and they show Prime Minister Scott Morrison has the highest approval ratings the nation's seen in over a decade for a party leader. But as he's written wisely in The Australian today, Dennis Shanahan says a lot of people want to see the Prime Minister succeed, so don't read too much into it. Dennis Shanahan joins me now, political editor at The Australian, via Skype. I think you're on the money there, Dennis. I think right now it's Team Australia. But I also think, to be fair to the PM, he's doing an extraordinary job dealing with a crisis where there is absolutely no rule book.
I think that there are two things at work here for Scott Morrison particularly. One is that the Newspoll also showed how anxious people are about the virus. In fact, their greatest concern at the moment is catching the virus. So it has really penetrated the public mind. Secondly, they were concerned about the possibility of losing their job. And the third equal point was government debt. Now, I think that what Scott Morrison faces now is a challenge for his personal leadership. He's demonstrated his ability to switch. He's pivoted very quickly on policy. He hasn't paid too much attention to ideology, and nor has he politicked. So the public is concerned. At a time of crisis, they go to incumbency, they go to the leader. That also applies to the leader of the opposition, by the way. People tend to line up their leaders and support them. I think Scott Morrison, though, needs to remember that the last person who had a figure like this was Kevin Rudd. And it was because of the global financial crisis. And we know that within 12 months of those fantastic figures, they started to decline, and not even Kevin Rudd's own party would keep him on as leader. So there is a cold background to this, that crisis polls don't necessarily last. John Howard had several huge jumps as an incumbent Prime Minister when we had September 11, the Bali bombings, the Port Arthur massacre. All of these things were hugely important for John Howard. They give him big boosts, but after a while they tend to decline. The challenge for the Prime Minister is to ensure that he continues to make decisions which people approve of, which are the right decisions, and he's also making the point that it can't last forever. That's the point about the polls. He wants to see a snapback on all this vast amount of money being spent. And I think that that's part of the message to those people who are concerned about the government debt and generational debt. And so I think that he's trying to manage in a very fast-moving environment, and I think he's doing pretty well.
Look, I think he is too. I have an eye, though, on the amount of debt that will be left on the table when you come out of this, and knowing how long it takes to pay back debt, how long it takes to even get the budget back into to sort of balance, so that you're not running deficit budgets, is what I'm trying to say. I think that's all very tough, particularly if you're going to find out of this. Some parts of the economy, yes, will get a bounce. Other parts will take a long time to come back, and there may not be the money in workers' pockets to pay the tax that governments, are going to need to turn things around. Interestingly, there's a lot of debate still around this JobKeeper scheme. Labor and the unions, it was said, wanted to have all casual workers included. It goes to a vote on Wednesday. Where do we stand?
Oh, I think that it will pass, obviously. The government has already indicated, Anthony Albanese and Scott Morrison have had a meeting already in relation to this. They're talking, Christian Porter is talking to the ACTU. I think we will get a resolution. I don't think the government will back down and accept Sally McManus's suggestion that if you had a reasonable prospect of having a casual job, you should then qualify for the JobKeeper. Christian Porter's made the point today that's not even in the current Fair Work Act. And of course, he maintains that you have to draw a line somewhere. Now, some people will miss out because of that, but you can't include everybody. And that is a question of cost. The other issue, of course,
I just want to put up a tweet that I picked up today, a guy called Rob Warburton. I'll put it up on the screen for you, Dennis, and I'll just read it out for people at home. He said, well, it started. Why work when you can sit at home and get paid a wage? Lost a worker this morning due to him wanting to be at home more. He works a 38-hour week and he can get by now due to the wage subsidies, and he wants the job back when this is over. This is where the devil in the detail is just so important.
Well, it is. There's no doubt about that, and that's why the government is moving heaven and earth to get the legislation through on the weekend. Not even Christian Porter had seen the legislation. They're getting it out. Drafting has now gone to the ACTU, the opposition. So they're trying to get it. But these things, and this was the terrible lesson for Labor, some of those people who are on the opposition benches now, during that global financial crisis, which saw such a boost in Kevin Rudd's popularity and standing, and the effort that they did to prevent Australia going into recession. But the detail of those programs ended up being the real lead in the saddlebags for Kevin Rudd and for a long time after in trying to get the debt cleared up. So this is going to be the big challenge. We hope we get through it. We hope we get through it in a short time. There is an unprecedented bill attached to it, and that's where the snapback is going to have to really hit. And it's going to be very hard. Once you give people something, and once you give people the opportunity to say, oh, well, I can do this and get more money, then you have a real difficulty in trying to take it back.
Absolutely. I'm going to look into this tomorrow night, because I'm also seeing lots of examples of casual workers who are going to get a lot more money out of this payment than they were paid previously, but a lot of people trying to raise families who have had their income literally cut in half. So, as I said, the devil's in the detail. Dennis Shanahan, as always, thanks for your insight.